Your baby looked at you this morning before they looked at anything else. Before the toys, before the light coming through the window, before the sound of the TV or the smell of coffee. They found your face first. You probably smiled and kept moving. But what if that moment, that quiet, effortless thing your baby does every single morning, is actually one of the most neurologically complex and emotionally loaded behaviors a human being can produce? And what if you have been walking past it every day without ever understanding what it means? Most parents think understanding their baby means learning to decode crying. But crying is the last resort. It is the alarm your baby pulls when everything else they tried went unnoticed. Before the cry, there is an entire language. A language built from eye contact and hand movements and the direction of a gaze and the tension in a tiny body. A language your baby has been speaking to you since the day they were born and possibly before. Welcome to Silent Baby Mind. Subscribe right now because what you're about to learn today will permanently change the way you look at your child. Let's start at the very beginning. Not birth. Before birth. In the final trimester of pregnancy, the auditory system of a developing baby becomes functional enough to process sound from outside the womb. Researchers have known this for decades, but what the more recent studies have added is something far more specific. It is not just that babies hear sound before they are born, it is that they are already beginning to form preferences. Your voice, filtered through amniotic fluid, through tissue and muscle, and the ambient rhythm of your body, becomes the most repeated auditory input in your baby's developing brain. By the time they arrive, they have heard you more than they have heard anything else in existence. This is why a newborn turns toward their mother's voice and not a stranger's. This is why the sound of you speaking, even when they cannot understand a single word, visibly changes their physical state. Their limbs still. Their breathing slows. Their face shifts. That is not a coincidence, and it is not instinct in the simple sense. That is a learned association formed before they ever took a breath outside the womb. You were already their definition of safe before they met you. Understanding this changes how you see everything that follows. In the first weeks of life, watch your baby's hands. This is something almost no parenting book emphasizes enough, and it is one of the most honest windows into your baby's internal state that you have access to. A newborn under stress, overstimulated, or dysregulated will hold their hands in tight fists. You can see the tension in those tiny fingers even when the rest of their face appears calm. But a baby who is fully settled, who has released the accumulated stress of being new to the world, will open their hands. Soft palms, splayed fingers resting loosely against your chest or against the mattress. That open hand is your baby's body telling you that their nervous system is let go, that the threat assessment their brain runs constantly has returned a result of safe. Most parents never consciously register this. They feel it. They notice that the baby seems more relaxed without being able to say why. But naming it matters. Because when you start looking for the open hand, you start understanding what produces it and what disrupts it. And that knowledge becomes one of the most practical tools you will ever have as a parent. Around 3 to 4 months, something shifts that researchers consider one of the most significant milestones in early human development. Your baby smiles at you on purpose, not the early reflex smiles that happen during sleep, which are likely the result of spontaneous neural activity and have nothing to do with you. This is different. This is a smile that begins when your face appears and stops when you look away. A smile that your baby repeats when you respond and withholds when you do not. Developmental psychology has called this the social smile, and what it represents is a cognitive leap of extraordinary proportions. Your baby has figured out the fundamental logic of human relationship. I express something internally. That expression travels outward through my face. The person in front of me receives it and responds. And that response changes how I feel. Therefore, expression is worth doing. Connection is possible. This person specifically is someone I can reach. That is not a small discovery. That is the discovery that makes everything else possible. What the research adds to this, particularly the work coming out of Harvard Center on the Developing Child, is that the quality of your response in these early exchanges is actively shaping the neural pathways your baby is building in real time. When your baby sends a signal and you return it with warmth and attention, a circuit is completed. When that circuit is completed hundreds of times, then thousands of times, it becomes infrastructure. The structural foundation of language development, emotional regulation, social cognition, and the capacity for intimacy that your child will carry into every relationship they ever have. This process has a name. Researchers call it serve and return interaction. Your baby serves, you return. And every completed exchange is a small act of brain building that no supplement, no toy, and no program can replicate or replace. Now let's talk about something that happens every day and almost no parent reads correctly. Your baby is on the floor or in your arms or sitting in a bouncer, and they look at you directly, hold your gaze for a few seconds, and then deliberately look away. You lean in. They look away again. You might interpret this as disinterest or distraction. It is neither. What your baby is doing is called gaze aversion, and it is one of the most sophisticated self-regulation tools available to a developing nervous system. When the intensity of social engagement becomes more than their brain can comfortably process, babies look away to regulate. They are not rejecting you. They are managing their own internal state. They are doing, at 2 months old, what most adults struggle to do at 40, recognizing when they are at capacity and taking a deliberate step back. What matters is what you do next. If you follow their gaze, wait without pressure, and allow them to return to you on their own terms, you are teaching them something that will take other children years to learn. You're teaching them that stepping away from connection is safe, that relationships can be paused and resumed, that the people who love them will be there when they come back. That is the prototype of secure attachment, and it starts with you letting your baby look away. Somewhere between 7 and 9 months, most babies go through a phase that parents find exhausting and pediatricians consider perfectly normal, and developmental psychologists find genuinely fascinating. Stranger anxiety. Your previously social baby, who smiled at the checkout clerk and laughed at your neighbor, suddenly dissolves into tears the moment an unfamiliar face appears. They turn to you, cling to you, press their face against you, and you spend the next several months apologizing to relatives and deflecting concerned looks from strangers who think something must be wrong. Nothing is wrong. Something is extraordinarily right. Stranger anxiety is not regression. It is not insecurity in a negative sense. It is the visible expression of a cognitive achievement that took your baby the entire first half of their first year to develop. They have now built a clear internal model of who you are, what you represent, and why you are categorically different from everyone else. They understand, at a neurological level, that your presence and a stranger's presence produce different outcomes in their body, and they are responding to that understanding with complete logical accuracy. When your baby clings to you in a room full of new faces, they are not being difficult. They are being precise. They have ranked the humans in their world by safety and importance, and you are at the top of that list by a significant margin, and they want you to know it. Around 9 to 12 months, a behavior emerges that developmental psychologists consider one of the most telling indicators of healthy attachment and social development. It is called social referencing, and once you know what to look for, you will see it constantly. Your baby is about to touch something new, crawl toward an unfamiliar object, encounter a situation they have no prior experience with. Before they do it, they stop. They turn to your face. They hold your gaze for 1, 2, 3 seconds. And then they make their decision based on what they see there. They are not looking at the object anymore. They are reading you. Is this safe? Does your face say go, or does it say stop? What does your expression tell me about whether this moment is okay? This requires your baby to understand something that most animals never grasp at all. That your internal emotional state, visible on your face, contains information that applies to their situation. That your feelings are not just yours. They are data. This is a form of social cognition so sophisticated that researchers spend entire careers studying it, and your baby develops it before their first birthday. What you do in that moment of social referencing shapes your child's relationship with risk and curiosity for years. Warm, encouraging responses raise children who are willing to explore. Anxious or alarmed responses raise children who treat novelty as threat. This is not about conscious parenting choices. It is about moments, and knowing about those moments makes them available to you in a way they were not before. Let's talk about crying, because it is impossible to talk about baby communication without addressing it, and most of what parents believe about it is incomplete. Your baby cries. You respond. They settle. 10 minutes later, they cry again. This cycle continues, and you start to wonder if you are somehow doing something wrong, if there is a need you are not meeting, if they are in pain or sick, or if your response is making things worse. Here is what the research actually says. Babies who are responded to consistently in the early months do not necessarily cry less in that period. In some studies, they cry more because they have learned something powerful. They have learned that their signal works, that crying produces a response, that they are not alone in this. And a baby who believes their communication is effective is a baby who communicates more, not less. What shifts over time is not the amount of communication, but the sophistication of it. That baby learns to use sounds before cries, gestures before sounds, eye contact before gestures, because the escalation is never necessary. Their earliest signal was always enough. The baby who learns that crying goes unanswered does not learn independence. They learn silence. And silence in an infant is not contentment, it is adaptation. It is a small nervous system concluding that expression does not change outcomes and quietly adjusting to that reality. The research on this is consistent and sobering. Responsiveness in early infancy does not create dependency. It creates security. And security is the foundation of independence, not its opposite. By the time your baby is approaching their first birthday, you are not caring for a helpless organism anymore. You are in a relationship with a person who has developed emotional memory, clear attachment hierarchies, a working model of cause and effect, a sense of humor specific to your particular dynamic, and a detailed internal map of you. Your voice, your smell, the specific rhythm of your footsteps in the hallway, the way you hold them when you are tired versus when you are playful. They know all of it. They have been studying you longer and more carefully than anyone else in your life ever has. They have built a model of you inside their mind, and they use that model every single day. To predict what comes next, to decide whether to explore or retreat, to understand what safety feels like in a physical body, to begin forming the earliest template of what love is and how it behaves. Every moment you pause and really look at them, you are contributing to that template. Every time you mirror their expression back to them, name what you see on their face, respond to their reaching before it becomes crying, you are giving them raw material they will use to understand themselves and other people for decades. Emotional intelligence does not begin in a classroom or a therapist's office. It begins here, in the ordinary moments that feel too small to matter. In the 10 seconds of eye contact before you put them down to sleep. In the way you talk to them when you have no idea what to say, because your voice alone is a form of regulation that nothing in their world can replace. You do not have to be a perfect parent to give your child this. You need to be present enough, often enough, that your baby builds a map of the world where they are noticed and where reaching toward someone produces a response. That is the whole thing. That is what every study and every researcher and every developmental framework keeps arriving at from different directions. Notice your baby. Respond to what you see. Let them know that their signals land. Because your baby has been trying to tell you something from the very first moment they arrived. Not with words, but with the direction of their gaze, the tension in their hands, the smile they save specifically for your face, the way they turn toward you before they decide whether the world is safe. They have been saying the same thing all along. You are the one. You are the person I came here looking for. And I have been watching to see if you are watching me. Start watching back. It is never too late to begin. And the difference it makes is not small. If this changed the way you see your baby even a little, please subscribe to Silent Baby Mind so you never miss what we cover next. Hit the like button if this gave you something to think about, and leave a comment below. Tell me one thing your baby does that you have always wondered about. I read every single one. See you in the next video.